Hey, mompreneurs, if you are feeling drained, overwhelmed, or like you're hustling nonstop without seeing the results you want, friend, I've got something just for you. I'm hosting a free virtual workshop where I'm going to show you how to protect your greatest asset, which is you. This is my absolute favorite topic to teach on, and this workshop has changed lives. So we're going to talk about breaking through burnout, creating healthy habits that stick, and aligning your actions with what really matters so you can thrive in your business and in your life. This is not about adding more to your to-do list. It's about simplifying, refocusing, and pouring back into yourself so you can show up fully for your business and your family. So if you're ready to feel energized, clear-headed, and in control again, you don't want to miss this. So I want you to head on over to martinewilliams.com/October workshop and sign up now. It's free. We'll have the link in the show notes, and I will see you there. Welcome to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast, where you will learn how to remix your mompreneur life so that you can win at work without losing yourself in the process. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I am your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business and elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl and hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Let's do this. What's the difference between launching and selling your course on autopilot? How do you know if you're ready to quit launching and start selling your course on autopilot? And what's the biggest difference between a course that flops and one that makes millions? Those are some things we're going to be talking about today on our podcast with Caitlin Bacher. She's our Turquoise Talk guest this week. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Caitlin Bacher is the CEO of Scale with Success, a company dedicated to teaching coaches and course creators how to turn their online course into a seven-figure business without launching. Her company has rapidly grown to over 11 million in revenue over the last few years with no signs of slowing down. This is a great conversation. If you have any ideas for a course or building an online business with content and creating a course, this episode is for you. So let's dive right in. Well, welcome back, friends. I'm so excited that we get to talk to a Turquoise Talk guest today, Caitlin Bacher. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to dive into this topic.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So as I was preparing for this podcast, I was just kind of catching up and reading your bio. And so I want to first just let you introduce yourself and tell us a little about you, your family, and kind of how you got into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, sure. So, we at our company, we help course creators sell more of their own courses without launching, even if they have a tiny audience.
Okay.
And actually, I got started selling courses. It's been a number of years now, but the very first course that I ever created was all about social media marketing. And that's because at the time I was a freelance social media manager. And so I was creating a course based on what I knew, which is something that we invite all of our clients to do.
Yeah. And so as I was reading your bio, you were talking about in there the day you forgot to pick your daughter up from kindergarten. So I think as a mompreneur podcast, I think, first of all, could you just talk a little bit about that? Because I'm sure there's some moms that are like, oh, I've done that. Or she did that too. Like, can we just normalize the overwhelm?
Oh my gosh, seriously. So when I first started selling my courses, I was trying out the launch model. And the reason why I was doing that is because everyone kept telling me that that's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I was, at the time, like I said, I was providing social media management services. So I didn't know a lot about the online course world. So I heard from, a couple people that this is what I needed to do. I just figured, okay, that was it. And if you're someone listening right now who's ever launched before, you already know that the process is grueling. And, it was really hard, especially because at the time, my daughter was, well, when I first started, my daughter was 2, but around the specific story that you're talking about, my daughter was 5 and she was in kindergarten. And, in school, sometimes they have early dismissal days for professional development, like various things here and there. And I'm always good about putting it on my calendar. And even though I put that early dismissal date on my calendar, I completely spaced it out. And I'll never forget when I was, heads down focused on creating, rewriting the same launch copy that I'd written probably 11 times before. And I saw my phone rang and it was the school calling, and I instantly realized my mistake.
Yeah.
Now, listen, my daughter is in the 7th grade now. And if I were late to pick her up now, it would not be a big,
right.
She would get over it. But at the time she's in kindergarten, she's very sensitive to these things. And so I just, I rushed to school. She was crying. She was confused. Everyone at the school was so nice about it. And to them, it wasn't a big deal. But to me, it was, because it's not like, it wasn't like, everything was going great and it was this one thing that happened. Like in the weeks and months leading up to that early dismissal day, I had not been very present at all with my family. And, like we'd planned this special day, like, oh, we're going to go to the park. We're going to get ice cream. We're going to do all this stuff. And it just like went down the toilet. And I felt so frustrated because of course, as a mom, I want to grow my business. I want to be able to support my family, all of these things. But at the same time, I want to be able to show up for my family. And, and so I was really kind of at a crossroads.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love when you said that there's more than one way, right, to build $1 million business. Because I do think it really does depend on like the community and who you're around. Like you get into certain groups, like you say, it's like launching. It's the only way. It's the best way. And really, and the work that I do with my clients, my one-on-one clients, is helping them to build their business their way in utilizing their strengths. So helping them to understand what their strengths, their personality are. And so I love this idea that there is more than one right way, because I do think that is what creates frustration for a lot of entrepreneurs. Is it's like, well, they're telling me this is the only way to do it. And so talk a little bit more about that. And if you want to talk about, launching and not launching, I've launched. I do. I tell people, I feel like I have PTSD a little bit from launching. So
listen, that launch PTSD is real. And I don't mean to make light of PTSD.
Right.
It really is very grueling and in some cases traumatizing to go through a launch. And the other thing I want to say before I kind of get into more details about the difference between launching and, selling your course evergreen is exactly like you said, there is more one right way to do something. If you are someone who is out there and you love launching, and some people do, like they just love it. They love the high adrenaline. They're just like in it.
Yep.
And it works for them. It works for their lifestyle, all that. Fine. Like that's awesome. Great.
Right.
But there is more than one right way to do something. And one of the things that I think is really important to me is that I get this message out there that there are multiple paths to the same destination.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for me, I didn't know. I was only exposed to launching when I first started. It was the only thing that I knew about. It wasn't until I met some other course creators. I joined a mastermind. There were a lot of different course creators in there, sold all kinds of different courses. There was this one guy, the course that he created was all about home organization, right? Like how to declutter your home.
Yep.
And he was making over $300,000 per month without launching.
Wow.
I had no clue at the time that was even possible. Like I had no concept of that. And so once I met him and, kind of got to know his story, I was like, okay, so there are other ways to do it. I wasn't sure how I was going to exactly get there, but I knew that there was another option. And for those of you listening that are like, okay, that's all great, Caitlin, but what is launching? What is evergreen? What's what's the deal with
Right.
that?
Yeah.
So there's basically, for people who sell online courses, there's basically two core business models, right? So one is the launch model, and one is an evergreen model. And so launching typically requires, 2 to 3 months of intense list building and content distribution leading up to what's called an open cart. And that open cart is a period of time when you are allowing people to enroll inside of your course. And that open cart can last anywhere from 5 to 7 days, right? Then nobody can buy your course again until you do your next launch, which is maybe, 6 months out or even a year later. And what most course creators find is that when their launch ends, so does all of that momentum that they've been working so hard to generate, right? So it's kind of radio silence until they begin that launch cycle all over again. And I have found in my experience that this is a very high risk way of selling your course, especially for course creators who are, making less than $1 million a year, have a tiny team or no team at all, and a non-existent ads budget. Now, if your course is generating less than $1 million a year, the number one thing that you need to be focusing on is how to generate consistent revenue so that you can start to really get some traction in your business. Now, the good thing about an evergreen model is that you're able to enroll new students into your programs on an ongoing basis, not just once or twice a year, which is great because then it puts you in a position where you can grow your business over time and you can collect data on, what marketing messages are resonating with your audience and determine what needs to be refined. So you basically have more opportunities to practice and get better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also just think about people are buying our courses because we have a solution to their problems, right? And those problems aren't just during a launch period. Maybe someone finds out about you for the very first time and you're out of your launch time. We want them to get the answers. We want them to get the solutions to their problems. And so for me, in the way that I my servant's heart for people would be, I want it available all the time. So that's also in alignment with, having your course open all the time. And I love the idea also of you talking about it, you get better and better. You get to learn, you get so much data, you get so much market research when you're constantly doing that. And so I appreciate you kind of sharing the differences in the two, because I know there are a lot of mompreneurs who are listening and maybe for the first time, they're like, hey, I have this idea for a course and I'm not sure. I've seen people launching, but I'm not really sure what's involved in that. I've heard about the evergreen model, but I'm not really sure what's involved with that. If someone is just kind of dipping their toes in and they have this idea for a course, I know we're not talking specifically about course creation, but what would you tell them? What would be some first steps to get started? Because it can feel very overwhelming, especially when you look on the internet and like you said, there are lots of ways to build the business. And so then the mind gets confused and you just want to that's a stupid idea. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So I can tell you a little story, right? The first time I created my course, the reason why I created my course, and like I said, that very first course that I created was all about social media marketing. I created it because when I was doing social media management, when I was doing consulting, I was taking clients through the same steps over and over and over again, right? And so what I was able to, I wasn't necessarily aware that I had a course in me, but when I really sat down to think about it, I'm like, okay, what am I actually helping people do? Okay, I'm helping them build their audience. What are the steps I take a client through every single time, when it comes to building their audience, right?
Yeah.
And, it's all about taking what you know and just putting it into steps. I can give another example. I had a wonderful client who worked with me for a few years. And when the first business that she had was a housekeeping business. So she would clean other people's houses. And the more houses she cleaned, the more money she would make. So she got real fast at cleaning houses, right? Top to bottom, fast. And what she ended up doing is packaging her system, her method for cleaning a house quickly. She wrote down the steps, packaged it into a course, and marketed that course to busy parents of young kids, because who needs a course more than busy parents of young kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, she packaged that. She ended up generating hundreds of thousands of dollars from that one course. And just like many of your listeners at the time, she didn't know how to do it until she started. And then she figured it out along the way. But yeah, it's like when choosing, a lot of times, I think when it comes to choosing that first topic, a lot of times people put a lot of pressure on themselves. And it's almost like they have this idea in their head, like they have to choose the perfect topic, and whatever topic they choose, they're going to be locked into selling for years and years. And let me tell you, that is not the case. Like the very first course I created, it was called Bossy Biz Ladies. It was all about social media marketing, sold that for a while. Then I had a course on Instagram, sold that for a while. Then I had a course about Facebook groups, sold that for a while. So like, it's okay to change your mind. And, you don't need to put so much, you're putting too much. Let me say it this way. I once worked with a coach who was talking about bringing a level 10 mindset to a level 1 decision. And a level 1 decision is something that you can easily change your mind. Like it's not a life or death decision, right? And so when you bring that level 10 energy to one that, like, if you do this, you cannot turn back time. Like you can't, this is like literally life or death. It's like, okay, you're just going to, stress yourself out. So I always say, teach what you know. Number one. Number two, choose a topic that you are really passionate about at the time, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be locked into that topic forever, but it has to be something that you're truly interested in. And I say that because I see so many people come to me and they're like, hey, so I have a couple ideas for your course. I'm like, okay, well, what are your ideas? And when they talk about them, there's always like one idea for a course that they feel like they have to do. Like it's a course, that topic that they should do because someone said they should, or, this, that, the other. And then they have this other idea for a course that they're real passionate about and really excited about. And I always tell them, we can figure out a way to market and sell anything. So choose the thing that you are passionate about, because you're going to be talking a lot about it.
Right.
Growing a business is no easy task. And so pick something that you actually enjoy.
Yeah. That you could talk about for hours. And that you would do for free too. That's kind of one of the things I thought of, was thinking of as I was listening to you. Like, it does have to be something you're super passionate about. And the other thing I heard you say when you were talking was you just have to start. You have to take a step, because if you are trying to make this big decision without taking one step to even dip your toe in it, like, is this something I really want to talk about? And maybe for a short period of time. And those that have been following me, for the last 5 years, my brand has evolved over time. I started with one thing, kind of like you said, and now, I've moved into different directions. And I will say, like, when I think about titles of branding and titles of courses and all this stuff, I'm like, oh my, like, it's so much anxiety. And it's like, I have to keep it this. And I'm like, no, I don't. I could literally change my mind. Same thing with pricing. I can change my mind with the next client. I do not have to, hold to this, price all the time. So it's just, we do get ourselves in this like all or nothing thinking.
Yes.
Right. And that can just keep so many of us paralyzed. So for those that are listening and that maybe are in launching and they're like, oh, okay, I want to get off the launch train. Like, this sounds really, really amazing. What does that transition look like? And how do you know that you're ready? Is it just like, I'm done, I'm tired of doing this? Or is there really like a good business principle around, okay, let's get out of launch and into evergreen?
Yeah. So what people ask all the time, like, how do I know if I'm ready? Am I ready? I don't know if I'm ready, all this stuff. And what I will say is that we've helped people skip the launch entirely and go straight to evergreen. We've also helped people come in who have launched before and they want to switch to an evergreen model.
Okay.
I always like to say, being ready is a choice.
Yep.
There is no magical checklist that you can say, okay, I've done this, I've done that. I have an email list. I have a follower on Instagram. I have the perfect course idea. A lot of times when we kind of get trapped into that thinking, it's because we're looking to avoid risk, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about avoiding risk and, avoiding making a mistake, avoiding failure, when you are doing that, you are avoiding growth, right? Because growth only comes from taking that first imperfect step and taking the next one and the next one and the next one. That's all it is. And so you kind of have to come to an understanding with yourself of, am I playing to win, or am I playing to not lose? And a lot of people are playing to not lose. And so they get stuck in this planning mode, and they're like doing all the things. They have so many different course ideas they're doing, but they're not moving forward. And the only way you're going to know how to sell more courses is to start selling it. And if nobody buys, then you just tweak stuff so that people will buy. Like it's not rocket science, but at the same time, when you don't know, when you've never done it before, it sure feels like rocket science.
Oh yeah.
How are you supposed to know?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're just used to like, there's a right way and a wrong way, and if you kind of tunnel vision yourself into, well, if I don't do it right, I've done it wrong, versus one of the mindsets that I hold on to is that I'm either getting the result that I want or the lesson that I need. And so that does allow me to be, resilient and to be a little bit more, now I still like to have the plan and the details, but I'm learning to let a lot of that go, because it is I'm just collecting data and I'm experimenting, and some things are going to work really well and some things may not work well. But until you throw the dart, right, you don't know if you're close to the target or not. And you might be way off on the edge of that dartboard, but now you know where you are and you can make adjustments to get closer to the bullseye. But if you never throw the dart in the first place, how will you ever know?
Yeah. And I love that analogy. And I think what some people don't understand is they're afraid to throw that dart because they think it's not gonna hit, and they're afraid that then they're doomed to a lifetime of not hitting the bullseye.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a skill. Everything is a skill. Whether you're throwing darts or making a sales page. Like nobody is good at it when they first start. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they get better over time. But the only way you get better at something is by practicing, is by putting it out there, right?
Yeah.
Tying a shoe, riding a bicycle, it's all the same thing. You fall, you mess up, you pick yourself up, you do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you seeing that's working really well right now in, evergreen webinars or courses, selling the courses evergreen? Hey friend, can I give you permission today? Like for real, your own permission slip. Permission to get clear, to cut out the noise, mostly the noise that is going on around in your own mind, in your own head. It's just swirling. And you're asking yourself questions like, why am I stuck? Why am I frustrated? Why am I not making progress on my goals? I want to invite you to a free clarity call with me where we're going to dive in and we're going to identify what are the 3 main issues that are keeping you stuck. Number 2, what are the mindsets around those issues that are actually keeping you from solving for those issues? It's not our skill sets, it's our mindsets that keep us stuck and hold us back. And then number 3, identifying what are your next steps. We all have a next step, and we have 100% responsibility for those next steps. Your only next step right now is to go to the show notes and book your free clarity call so that we can work through this. I'm believing in you, and I cannot wait to see you on our clarity call.
Yeah. So when it comes to selling your course evergreen, I think that the most important thing that you really need to get focused on is to make sure that when you are creating content that kind of warms people up before the webinar, right? Whether that's an ad for your evergreen webinar, whether it's some kind of social media content for your evergreen webinar, whatever it is, whatever kind of, whether it's a podcast or a blog post, whatever video, it's really important to make sure that when you are creating that kind of content, that you are speaking about problems that your audience is already aware that they have and they want to solve. And I know that sounds kind of like a no-brainer, but so many people waste time trying to convince someone that they have a problem. And let me tell you, those people are not your people. You don't have time to convince someone that they have a problem that they're not even aware of. I can tell you right now, there are hundreds of thousands of people pouring through the internet, searching to solve a problem that they are aware that they have. Right. They are actively looking for solutions. They have already purchased courses. They've already worked with coaches. They bought books. They've listened to podcasts. They've done all of these things, and they haven't found the answer they're looking for yet. Those are the people that you need to be speaking to. It's people who already are aware they have a problem, and they already know that they want to prioritize time to solve their problem. Right. Because it's almost like that thing of, I was having a conversation with a client the other day, and she said, it seems like I, keep attracting people who say they don't have time, right? They don't have time to solve it right now. They don't have time to solve it. And I'm like, if someone's coming to you and they're saying they don't have time to solve their problem, then that problem just is not important enough for them to solve right now. And that's okay. Don't waste your time trying to get those people over the hump when there's a giant pool of people who are fully committed to solving their problem right now. And I think sometimes, when we have people, who come to our different sales events, or we find them on social media or whatever, and they say, well, I'd love to invest, but I don't have time. I'd love to invest, but I don't have the money, this or that. Okay. That's not always necessarily an objection for you to overcome. It's just not the right time for them. And that's okay, because there's a lot of other people that do have the money and that are committed to creating the time in order to get their problem solved. Yeah. And the way you do that is talking with people, right? And just having conversations with people and saying kind of like the words they're saying. I find myself in plenty of times in my messaging and emails and stuff. Even just recently, I was talking with someone about my podcast, and she was like, you're so intelligent and you're so smart, but sometimes you say things like in a coach speak, and your customer, your client, your future clients, like they're not talking like you're talking. So how can you say this? Like, explain to me. And so I would just riff on some things. She's like, that's what they're saying. It's not what you're saying. That's what they're saying. And I think that is so important, because I know in my mind what their problem is. And I know in my mind what the solution is. But until you have real conversations with people, like you were saying earlier, taking that first step and just having some real conversations with people about their problems, they'll give you the answer. They'll tell you clearly, like, this is what I'm looking for. And they are asking that, like, do you understand my problem and can you help me? That's what they're asking every interchange with you. Do you understand my problem and can you help me? And the clearer we can get at that, the better. And the cool thing about that is that you don't have to make it up. People are literally just going to tell you, right? So you can, a few questions that I always like to ask people, sometimes every so often we survey our audience. I'll get on the phone with people, specifically people who I think are a good fit for the program, but didn't buy. And so I want to talk to them and be like, hey, I kind of thought you were fit. Like, what happened there? And the questions that I always like to ask are, number one, why do you think this course won't work for you? Right? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. Sometimes they genuinely don't have the money. Sometimes they genuinely are just not wanting to make it time a priority. But there's a lot of people that just say, oh, I don't have time, or oh, I don't have the money, just because they don't want to get into the specifics with you, right? They don't know you all that well. And so the only way to really get to the bottom of it is through these conversations. And so a lot of times they think that your course sounds great. They think your course, works for other people, but it's not going to work for them because of X, Y, or Z. And if your course actually does address the needs of X, Y, and Z, then you need to figure out how to better communicate that in your sales and marketing materials. And so some questions that you can ask people are, number one, why do you think this course won't work for you? Number two, what have you tried so far to solve your problem. This is going to give you so much information into the mistakes that they're making, because as they're telling you what they've been trying, and you have to, it's hard, but you're not there to give advice or to tell them what to do instead. You're just listening, right? You're just gathering information. They're going to rattle off the long list of things that they've tried. And in your head, you're going to be like, okay, now, like, I totally see why this person has not been getting results there. But that's information for you, so that then you can create content on social media or a blog or whatever that is calling out those mistakes and saying like, hey, or myths, right? Like, these are things that I know you're actively doing. And when you're putting out content like that, it's helping you build authority with your audience, because your audience is like, oh my gosh, she totally gets me. Like, I was doing that. How did she know I was doing? Whoa, like,
she's speaking right to me.
Exactly. So, figuring out what have you tried before, right? And then asking, why do you think that didn't work? And this one gives you even an additional layer of context and information. It's going to help you identify not just the mistakes of what they're doing, but you're going to be able to uncover a lot of myths, right? Like, because they're going to say like, well, I think it didn't work because da, 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 da. They're going to have all these like different like beliefs and things like that about why that didn't work. That's, again, all content for you, right?
Yeah.
Then you can say the last question I like to ask is, well, what are you going to try next? Right? Like, what's the next thing? And that's also helpful to you, because maybe they're on the fence between your program and someone else's, right? And so maybe they're like, well, I actually saw this other thing that I think I'm going to try. And you can then make sure that you are positioning your offer as unique and different than that other offer. So over time, you start to kind of figure out, oh, okay, like, these are the things that my core audience is comparing me to, right?
Yeah.
Because in your head, you might have an idea of who your competitors are, but your audience might see it totally different.
Yeah.
And you know something is off when what they're comparing you to is something that is way cheaper, right? So like, if you're selling, let's say you're selling $1,000 course, right? If you're selling $1,000 course and everyone is comparing you to a $20 ebook, something's off in your marketing, right? Because nobody should be comparing after seeing your pitch, after seeing everything, nobody should be comparing that to a $20 ebook.
Yeah, for sure. That's so good. And I think it's just valuable information, even for someone who's just, again, taking their first step into maybe building out their course. Like, this is such great information for them to have, even building out the course, right? Yes. Before you even go to market, before you even go into marketing it, is like, okay, am I on the right track? What am I missing maybe in my course? I have an idea of what the steps are, but by having these conversations with your potential clients or friends or just people that you can have some market research with is so important.
Yeah. And the cool thing about selling an evergreen course is the better it gets, the better it gets. So as people are going through your course, you're going to start to identify, oh, a lot of people have like this question in the course. Maybe I should just include a little frequently asked question underneath that lesson that answers that thing, right? And then if it keeps coming up, maybe you're like, maybe I should actually go redo that one lesson to just make sure that I'm inserting this into it. And so over time, your course gets better and better, right? Yeah. Because people are going through it. It doesn't have to be perfect from the start. And in fact, it won't be. Yeah. And if someone has a question, if they're asking for clarity on something as they're going through your course, it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means they have a question. And asking questions is a good thing. It means that they are engaged. It means that they feel comfortable enough to ask you something, and it's an opportunity for you to clarify it for that person. And if it keeps coming up, just go in and add a little something else.
Yeah. Do you find with people who have an evergreen course or sell with evergreen, do they have like a live coaching aspect to it too? Or is it all like pre-recorded content that just lives?
So it's different for everyone, right? Okay.
Yeah.
For example, our evergreen program, we do have live weekly Q&As. So twice per week, I host live Q&As every single week. Yeah. And I'm doing that. But when they get access to the program, they get access to everything right away. Yeah. And they go through it at their own pace. However, some people, when they're selling an evergreen course, they don't want to have a community, or they don't want to have, office hours. That's okay too. They're just selling the content. Sometimes they want the content to be dripped out, like it's on some kind of a timer or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get access to everything all at once. It just depends, right?
Yeah.
And so once you get in there and you start doing it, you're going to figure out kind of what works best for you and for your clients, because you want to make sure that you're doing something that is sustainable for yourself, right?
Right.
And I think that, a lot of times when people create their first course, they throw so much into it because they want to give so much value and they want people to have a great experience. And they think the more they add to it, the better the experience will be. And that's not always the case. So ideally, you're giving them the least information they need to have the best possible outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Because most of us don't have a knowledge problem. My podcast listeners have heard me say this. It's not a knowledge problem. It's an implementation problem. Right. And so we think, well, I'll just throw a bunch of information at them when they're already overwhelmed with information. I mean, we have AI, we have Google, we have YouTube, we have podcasts, like we have all at our fingertips knowledge, right? And information. And so how can you help them implement? To me, is like the number one thing, whether it is through an evergreen course or one-on-one coaching or whatever, but like getting them from point A to point B is, the most important thing, helping them implement. So what have you seen is the biggest difference in a course that really does well and the one that's like flops completely?
Yeah. So I think that when it comes to selling a course that makes like, millions and millions of dollars and one that flops, the thing that I would say is the biggest difference is the willingness of the course creator to track their data, right? To make small tweaks and track improvements over time. So I think that, for a lot of people, what happens is they release a course, maybe they get some sales initially, maybe not. And then as they sell it over time, the sales kind of start to dip. Right. And so they have a choice, right? And they can either dig in, get on the phone with people, be like, hey, why do you think this won't work for you? What are you going to do instead? Like asking them all those questions to try to tweak your sales and marketing. Or you can tell yourself, you know what? I guess this means people just don't want this course anymore. I guess this means I have to create a brand new program. And there is so much value in those tiny tweaks and shifts. And I don't care how popular or how amazing your course is. Everyone, if you've been selling, like I've been selling the same course for 7 years, everyone, as they're selling their course, has dips. And when those dips happen, it's an opportunity for you to get better, to get things going up again. Right. And so so when you are encountering, a challenge, whether it's sales related or related to the size of your audience or whatever it is in your business, it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't working. You just need to scrap everything. Look at what small changes you can make and make those changes. You can't just sit there and kind of cross your fingers and be like, oh, I hope things improve. I hope things improve like month after month. You got to make some changes. And sometimes those changes are small, and sometimes the actual content of your course doesn't need to change at all. You can keep teaching the same thing. It's just the way that you talk about your course in your sales and marketing, because the world is always changing. And so the reasons why someone might purchase your course today might look different 2 years from now. Right. And they still need your course. They're still trying to solve that problem, but they talk about solving their problem in a different way.
Yeah. And that goes back to the mindset of an entrepreneur, right? And having that resiliency and having that curiosity versus convincing, or just tell me a little bit about that as we kind of wrap up. Like what it has been like your mindset really to kind of help you as you have, launched multiple courses and you tried multiple ways. Like what has been the maybe one or two mindsets shifts that you've had to have to create that and keep going? Because entrepreneurship is the biggest journey of personal development you'll ever go on.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're a rare breed, right? It does require a certain level of emotional resilience, right? To be able to withstand the changes in the market and the changes in how she buys or he buys and all the things you were talking about. So I just would love to know what are some of your winning mindsets that you have now?
Yeah. So the two things that I like to tell clients all the time is, as a CEO of your business, you have two jobs. Number one, manage your emotions. Nobody's going to do that for you. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the responsibility of your coach to manage your emotions, the course you bought, the consultant you hired. You have to manage your emotions. And number two, you have to measure your results.
Yeah.
Now, I am a very creative, intuitive, highly emotional person. And that is why I love measuring results. That's why I love data, because it helps get me out of that emotional kind of space where I'm just making decisions based on feelings that come and go. And I'm able to look objectively and see, oh, okay, like, so this is what the real problem is. And to come up with a solution, a plan to solve that one particular problem. And, managing your emotions is hard because, if you're out there complaining about this or that, temporarily, it can feel really good because you're going to have a lot of people come up to you and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, me too. All this stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But if your head's down focused, doing the work of growing your business, there's no fanfare. Nobody's going to come and be like, hey, I just want to say you are doing a great job. Nobody's doing that. And so it's hard. And at times it can feel lonely, but in doing that and having that mindset, what you're going to find is over time, you're going to start attracting people who have that same mindset. And you're going to start to build out a community of people who see the work that you're doing and are able to acknowledge that. But it's, managing your emotions, measuring your results, definitely key to a successful business.
Yeah. I love that. So tell me what you're most excited about in your own business right now and where people can connect with you.
Yeah. So the best place to connect with me right now is probably Instagram. Okay. So I've been doing people have been DMing me a lot on Instagram. We've been kind of experimenting with some new kinds of content on Instagram. Sometimes I post funny outtakes, things like that.
I love those. I love those. I love anything that makes me laugh because laughter is so good for the heart.
It
so
really
good for the soul. Yeah.
And so I'll post some of those. But definitely Instagram is the best place to connect on social media. Okay. I also have a free masterclass that really goes into the specifics of my method for selling a course without launching. Okay. You can access that at caitlinbacher.com/masterclass.
Okay. Awesome. And again, what's exciting for you right now?
Oh, what's exciting for me? Honestly, I'm having so much fun creating content, and I've managed to get my husband to help me shoot some like different B-roll, and we've had so much fun doing it because he's ridiculous, and I don't know, that's kind of the thing. We've been trying to get our. Like sometimes we try to get our daughter is like, no, we're not, she's not going to be on the camera, but we try to get our cat in on the fun. I don't know. So that's really been, it's been a joy to be able to just be creative and put things out there. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, but it's that creative process of having an idea and then executing on it and seeing what happens.
And then getting the data back. Like you said,
exactly.
Like you can't get the data back if you're not executing on it. So,
yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you so much for coming on. We could literally have talked for another hour about this topic, but I'm so excited that you gave them some really good things to think about. And we're going to put the links to everything in our show notes. So I know people will go and check that out, that free masterclass. I'll probably go check it out too. So I have a course that's been like sitting in the vault for probably about 3 or 4 years. So it might be time to start bring it back out. So thank you so much again, Caitlin, for coming on today.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.